Just hours ago, President Trump called me to tell me he is, quote, pissed off with Russia's President Putin and threatened to impose secondary tariffs on Russia's oil. Quote, if Russia and I are unable to make a deal on stopping the bloodshed in Ukraine, and if I think it was Russia's fault, which it might not be, but if I think it was Russia's fault, I am going to put secondary tariffs on all oil coming out of Russia. Mr. Trump said 25% tariffs on Russian oil could happen any moment and told me he plans to speak with President Putin this week. The president told me, quote, I was very angry, pissed off when Putin started getting into Zelensky's credibility and started talking about new leadership in Ukraine. On Iran, the president said he's also considering secondary tariffs if Iran doesn't agree to a nuclear deal. Quote, if they don't make a deal, there will be bombing, and it will be bombing the likes of which they have never seen before.
On Saturday, my administration helped broker a full and immediate ceasefire, I think a permanent one, between India and Pakistan, ending a dangerous conflict of two nations with lots of nuclear weapons. And they were going at it hot and heavy, and it was seemingly not going to stop. And I'm very proud to let you know that the leadership of India and Pakistan was unwavering, powerful, but unwavering in both cases, and having these. They really were, from the standpoint of having the strength and the wisdom and fortitude to fully know and to understand the gravity of the situation. And we helped a lot. And we helped also with trade. I said, come on, we're going to do a lot of trade with you guys. Let's stop it. Let's stop it. If you stop it, we're doing trade. If you don't stop it, we're not going to do any trade. People have never really used trade the way I used it. That I can tell you. And all of a sudden they said, I think we're going to stop. And they have. And they did it for a lot of reasons, but trade is a big one. We're going to do a lot of trade with Pakistan. We're going to do a lot of trade with India. We're negotiating with India right now. We're going to be soon negotiating with Pakistan. And we stopped the nuclear conflict. I think it could have been a bad nuclear war.
President Trump expected to accept what could be the most valuable gift ever given to a U.S. president from a foreign government. Sources telling ABC News the royal family of Qatar is preparing to deliver a luxury Boeing 747-8 jumbo jet valued at $400 million. Administration officials say it would be used by President Trump as the new Air Force One.
Here's ABC's Selena Wang with the details.
Sources tell ABC News the Trump administration is preparing to accept the gift of this super luxury Boeing jet from the royal family of Qatar. The 747-8 jumbo jet would be used by President Trump as the new Air Force One. President Trump toured the new plane this past February while it was parked here at the West Palm Beach International Airport, calling it, quote, a flying palace. The current Air Force One fleet dates back to 1990, the next generation being built by Boeing, riddled with years of delay and cost overruns. Back in 2016, newly elected Donald Trump balked at the cost.
It's going to be over $4 billion. It's for Air Force One program. And I think it's ridiculous. I think Boeing is doing a little bit of a number. We want Boeing to make a lot of money, but not that much money.
But in 2017, 1 month into his first term, negotiations with Boeing seemed to be moving forward.
We're also working on the Air Force One project, which was a difficult project for previous administrations, but it looks like we're getting closer and closer.
Boeing's most recent estimated delivery date is now 2027, but Trump has made it clear he wants a new plane this year. Just before the end of his term, ownership of the plane would transfer to the Trump Presidential Library Foundation, according to sources familiar with the proposed arrangement. The unusual and unprecedented gift of this luxury jet is sure to raise questions about whether it's legal for the administration and ultimately the Trump Presidential Library Foundation to accept something of this value at $400 million from a foreign power. But sources tell ABC News that White House lawyer David Warrington and Attorney General Pam Bondi concluded it would be, quote, legally permissible for the donation of the aircraft to be conditioned on transferring its ownership to the Presidential Library before the end of President Trump's second term. Selena Wang, ABC News, Washington.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on this busy Wednesday night. I'm Lindsay Davis in for David. We begin with a federal judge blasting the Trump administration, threatening a contempt investigation over what he called a willful disregard of his order to halt deportations to a notorious prison in El Salvador. Judge James Boasberg is accusing the administration of a hurried removal operation. The planes landed in El Salvador, even though he ordered them to turn around. The judge is now preparing to launch an official contempt investigation, which could include requiring testimony under oath and appointing an independent lawyer to prosecute the government for contempt. Caught in the conflict, Kilmore Abrego Garcia, the Maryland husband and father the administration admits was wrongfully sent to El Salvador. A unanimous Supreme Court ordered the administration to facilitate his return. Today, the White House said he will never live in the United States again. In his ruling on contempt, Judge Boasberg wrote the willful disobedience of judicial orders without consequences would make a mockery of the Constitution itself. ABC's senior political correspondent Rachel Scott leads us off from the White House.
Tonight, a dramatic escalation in the battle between the White House and the courts. A federal judge threatening a contempt investigation into the Trump administration for deporting more than 200 Venezuelan immigrants to a notorious prison in El Salvador, despite his order to turn the planes around and return to the United States. Judge James Boasberg declaring the administration displayed a willful disregard for his order, determining there was probable cause to find them in contempt. The judge now preparing to launch an official investigation, which could include officials testifying under oath. He even raises the remarkable prospect of appointing an independent lawyer to prosecute the government for contempt. President Trump has praised the deportations, claiming without evidence the men are violent gang members, inviting El Salvador's president to the White House.
He's done a fantastic job.
But the administration tonight facing mounting questions about the fate of this man, Kilmore Abrego Garcia, last seen head shaved in that Salvadoran prison. Abrego Garcia, an undocumented immigrant from El Salvador, was working and living in Maryland with his American wife and children when he was put on that plane because the government made an administrative error, a mistake they acknowledge. Tonight, Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen traveling to El Salvador looking for any information about Abrego Garcia.
I'm asking President Bukele, under his authority as president of El Salvador, to do the right thing and allow Mr. Abrego Garcia to walk out of a prison, a man who's charged with no crime, convicted of no crime, and who was illegally abducted from the United States.
The Supreme Court has ordered the administration to facilitate Abrego Garcia's return to the United States. But President Trump, who is paying El Salvador $6 million to hold the immigrants, says it's up to that country to send him back.
He is not coming back to our country. President Bukele said he was not sending him back. That's the end of the story. If he wanted to send him back, we would give him a plane ride back. There was no situation ever where he was going to stay in this country. None.
The administration insists Abrego Garcia is a violent gang member, but he does not have a criminal record either here or in El Salvador. His family says he fled that country as a teenager in 2011 to escape gang persecution. A judge had ordered that he not be returned to El Salvador because of potential danger. According to court documents, in 2019, a confidential informant named him as a member of the gang MS-13. But a federal judge this month found that evidence unconvincing. Today, the White House noting that in 2021, his wife Jennifer obtained a temporary protective order against him. But that case was later closed. And now Abrego Garcia's wife is on the front lines, pleading for her husband's return. And Lindsay, tonight, El Salvador's president upping the ante, telling the Trump administration he plans to double the size of that prison in his country that's now holding Abrego Garcia and those other migrants, Lindsay.
Rachel Scott from the White House. Thanks, Rachel.
And many married women, soon to be married women, are concerned that the new voter ID requirements may inhibit their access to the polls. What assurances can you give women voters in America to ease their concerns?
Sure. Well, the SAVE Act, as you mentioned, was passed by the House yesterday. This is the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. I believe I'm getting that correct. And this act is a common sense measure. It would require proof of citizenship for voting in our elections. The Democrats have been fear-mongering about this bill, have been saying that married women, if their name has changed, they didn't change it on their identification, would not be able to vote. That is complete fallacy. There are outlined in the bill about how to avoid that. The president very much supports a common sense solution to ensuring that only citizens can engage in our elections. This is critical to improving the integrity of our elections and also the trust that American citizens need to have in our electoral process. So the president supports this bill, and that is a myth that has been proven wrong by the text of this bill. And I believe some of the co-sponsors of the bill have been very vocal in addressing that. And certainly I myself, as a married woman, would not stand before this podium if the president did not support such a common sense measure.
A potential breakthrough in the push for public health. President Trump signs an executive order banning dangerous virus research. And Dr. Mark Siegel, a Fox News senior medical analyst, is here on that. RFK Jr. was on Laura Ingram's show last night. Let's take a quick listen and get your reaction.
Do you think this is the reason that Anthony Fauci was given a pardon by Joe Biden, and that in some way is linked to this gain of function funding?
You know, I don't know what was going on in Joe Biden's head, but I think that Anthony Fauci probably asked for that pardon, knowing that he had some liabilities here that were more than reputational. They were legal liabilities.
Your thoughts on this, EO?
Well, you know, at the beginning of the pandemic, there were those emails back and forth that looked like a certain narrative was being suppressed, Dana, and that's disturbing because if you ask the American public now what they think actually happened in Wuhan, the vast majority say in poll after poll that lab leak is very likely. And then if you say, well, okay, if it was a lab leak, what should we do now? And the answer would be you would ban gain-of-function research. As you know, it was banned in 2014 after it was discovered in Netherlands that they were playing with an H5N1 bird flu virus and figured out the exact mutations it would take to go human to human. That ban was lifted in 2017. Well, if we think the COVID pandemic may well have started there, it emphasizes how dangerous this is, and funding for that makes it even more dangerous. You're talking about manipulating viruses to gauge their potential to go human to human or to kill people, and again, may have led to the pandemic. One more problem to point out is, even with banning the funding, even with trying to control this, it still can happen, and it can happen in other countries.
So about a year and a half after the pandemic started, there was a hearing on Capitol Hill, and there was a big clash between Dr. Fauci and Senator Rand Paul. Let's take a look back.
You take an animal virus and you increase its transmissibility to humans, right. You're saying that's not gain of function?
Yeah, that is correct.
They're animal viruses that became more transmissible in human, and you funded it.
And you
admit the truth.
You are implying that what we did was responsible for the deaths of individual. I totally resent that. And if anybody is lying here, Senator, it is you.
So a few years later, knowing what we know now, when you look back on that, what does it make you think?
Well, it makes me think that there was a lot of information that was available that we know now about the CIA weighing in, about the FBI weighing in, about a lot of stuff going on around the lab and people going to hospitals. I think that, and Dr. Fauci's had been on my radio show multiple times saying he was keeping an open mind, but that particular exchange is disturbing because, again, there's no way that there was any proof. And Dana, over 60,000 species were tested to see if they were the intermediate creature here, you know, that would show where COVID actually came from, and none were determined to be the case, and China never let anyone into the lab. So I can't really accept that Dr. Fauci was saying that. At other times, he's been a lot less leading than that. But there again is that narrative. We know it came from nature. Well, more and more it looks like it didn't.
Do you, just a quick yes or no, do you think that there are other countries around the world who might be actually still doing gain-of-function research, whether funded by us or whoever? I mean, hopefully not funded by us, but do you think that's happening elsewhere?
There's no question, and it puts out a roadmap that terrorists can get to. This is the most important headline here in the last 10 seconds. People get this information, they could use it to create a virus so scary and needs to be stopped if it can. And we have artificial intelligence which will give us the same information.
Dr. Mark Siegel, thank you.
This is the moment a massive super yacht sank off the coast of Italy. The Coast Guard rescued 9 people, but was unable to tow the yacht due to inclement weather. An investigation is now underway into what caused it. Monkeypox has now been found in all 50 U.S. states, after Wyoming confirmed its first case of the virus on Monday. The CDC has now reported over 15,000 cases here in the U.S. An E. coli outbreak possibly linked to some Wendy's sandwiches has spread to 4 states, infecting at least 37 people so far. Wendy's confirmed it's fully cooperating as the CDC investigates. And Meta reached a settlement for more than $37 million over a lawsuit accusing Facebook of violating user privacy by tracking their location through their smartphones without permission.
President Trump has given multiple lengthy interviews in recent days, and they've sparked as many questions as they have answers. Our Politics Monday team is here to separate the substance from the noise. That's Amy Walter of the Cook Political Report with Amy Walter and Tamara Keith of NPR. Great to see you both.
Good to be here.
So we've been talking about, I know you've been following, there's a common thread in the president's recent interviews. That's the number of times he references his lawyers, right, Tam, when he's asked about people who were deported or rescinding federal payments or whether he's going to run for a third term. He says, I'm listening to my lawyers. How much of this presidency relies on the interpretation of the lawyers around this president?
Yes. President Trump has long talked about his lawyers. When he was out of office, when he's in office, he's all about a stable of lawyers. The interesting thing about him is that he considers the lawyers at the Justice Department also to be his lawyers, which is not actually the role of the Justice Department in a traditional administration. He both wants arm's length and doesn't want arm's length, depending on what he wants at any given moment. But you have to remember that members of his administration, people who are around him now, they aren't necessarily lawyers, but they spent the entire 4 years out of office thinking about new and different ways to push the boundaries of executive power, to use the laws that exist in novel ways to get what they wanted that they weren't able to do in the first administration. And President Trump is someone who likes to be powerful and wants to try these things. It is clear that his administration is trying many things that other presidents simply haven't tried, including former President Trump.
Amy, when you look at this issue of due process, upholding the Constitution, are these the kinds of things that resonate with the electorate?
I think with certain parts of the electorate, yes. But for those who are not paying as much attention to politics, what they're paying attention to is the impact of politics on their day-to-day lives. These seem still very much like the kind of thing that would be on an exam in school, much more than its impact on the lives that they're living. On issues like the economy, on tariffs, they are very much keyed in on that. On these issues, especially among people who, as I said, they're not necessarily seeking out news, those issues tend to be less resonant.
And I know the economy, of course, was the #1 issue for voters. When they voted for President Trump, he was asked about the economy and really who owns this moment in time for the American economy in that NBC interview. Here's what the president had to say.
When does it become the Trump economy?
It partially is right now, and I really mean this. I think the good parts are the Trump economy, and the bad parts are the Biden economy.
Amy, over 100 days in, do the American people see it as a Biden economy or a Trump economy?
Well, in the polling done for NPR and PBS by Marist, no, they do see that this is really Trump's economy. When asked the question about who do you think is responsible, 60% said Trump, and only 39% basically said that this is still the hangover from Biden's economy. So it is pretty clear at this point that when voters are looking at the direction of the economy, why things are the way they are, they do put a lot of the responsibility on Donald Trump. What's fascinating to me, especially in that whole interview, was the amount of time that the president spent on defense, basically trying to convince not just his interviewer, Kristen Welker from NBC, but the entire audience that the things that they say they don't like, because we see in poll after poll, people say, we don't like tariffs. We don't think tariffs are good. Yeah. We think tariffs are a tax. What he spent most of the time doing in that interview was trying to convince them that they are wrong and he is right. What they are seeing or feeling or anxious about is not where things are. And that, I think, is going to be the biggest challenge going forward because, Amna, as you very well know, the impact of tariffs has yet to really hit, right? Because these shipments that are not coming from China are going to start to hit us May and June, the lag. Yeah.
Well, Tam, as you know, from the messaging perspective of this White House, that you have a president who's trying to convince people he's on top of the economy. At the same time, he posted that gas is down to $1.98 a gallon, which it is not. We checked, and my colleague Kyle Medora found it's $3.12 a gallon. That's the average price nationwide. The lowest we could find anywhere was $2.19 at a station in Mississippi. What does this tell you about the president? Is he getting bad information, or does he not know?
He could be talking about wholesale prices, but let's just be clear. When it comes to numbers and President Trump, he is often untethered from reality. I will just give another example, egg prices. And we should say gas prices are coming down, just not as much as he says. Same with eggs. Egg prices, wholesale egg prices are down. He says they're down 87%. Last week, his own White House put out a memo and said it was around 50%. His own White House. So President Trump and numbers are often a very loose relationship.
As you guys know, we try to focus the conversation around the biggest headlines every week, but there's a lot of things we hear from the White House, Tam, that we just can't give more attention to because of the pure volume. A couple of examples just from yesterday. The president last night posted on Truth Social, rebuild and open Alcatraz, referring to the prison island that's been shuttered for over 60 years. Also yesterday, he announced there's going to be a 100% tariff on movies made outside of the United States, describing it as a national security threat. How do you look at these messages? Should we take them seriously, or are they a distraction?
Well, The Rock was a really good movie about Alcatraz. But other than that, President Trump has an incredible ability to generate attention. And he markets himself. He markets his ideas. He gets people talking about him. Whether these things become a reality or not, he has gotten a whole lot of airtime out of it. And that's airtime not spent talking about concerns about tariffs or the price of dolls, which he says, well, maybe kids will just have to have fewer dolls.
Yeah, and this is what I think we talked a lot about after 2024. Democrats are still struggling with this idea that he can get in front of audiences that they can't. And part of that is when he talks about things like Alcatraz or the other issues, Greenland, et cetera, he is starting conversations in spaces that are not traditional media spaces, whether it's podcasts or YouTube channels. And that keeps him in front of audiences that aren't necessarily keyed in on other issues and aren't watching the news as closely as some.
And these don't require a nuanced conversation. It's just it's ephemera, and it can generate attention to the president.
And we worked in a movie reference to The Rock as well. So, Tamara O'Keefe, Amy Walter, always great to see you both. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
I'm pleased to reveal that the 2027 NFL Draft, that's a big thing, will be held right here in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., on the National Mall. And you get a little glimpse of it. I was just saying to Roger, I don't think there's ever been anything like that. That's a good idea. In fact, maybe we could use it for other things also. I have an idea. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be something that nobody else will ever be able to duplicate that, I don't suspect. It's very exciting. Every year, hundreds of young football players have their dreams come true as the NFL teams across the land, and you just saw that last week, select the best young players in America to join their ranks. Hundreds of thousands of football fans will travel all across our country to cheer them on in person. We expect, would you say, more than 100,000 people, I think. What is the capacity would you think it can hold? Because the mall can actually hold up to 1 million people if you go all the way back. What do you think?
Over 3 days, we'll be over 1 million.
Oh, yeah, you're going to be. Boosting local businesses and bringing jobs and tourism to the heart of our capital. The draft is a celebration of one of our country's most cherished cultural institutions and the annual highlights for football fans everywhere. Everyone in the world is going to be watching. We look forward to welcoming people from across the nation, from all over the world. Last month, the Washington Commanders and the D.C. government also announced a major deal to build a brand new 65,000-seat football arena at the site of the RFK Stadium in eastern Capitol Hill. And I don't think there is a better site anywhere in the world than that site.
Incredibly exciting.
You know, he's a friend of mine. He's a very successful guy. There's a reason for it. It's amazing. It sat there for years, and people were talking about stadiums in 25 different sites. I said, they're not talking about the best site. That's the best site there is. Bringing professional football back into the district from Maryland. And not only are these announcements great for the NFL, but they also advance the mission of making Washington, D.C. safe and clean and beautiful. And we're working very closely with the mayor, as you know, and we've made a lot of improvements in the last few months, and it's getting to look really strong. Crime is way down, and there's a good relationship we have going with Muriel. So I want to thank you very much. And would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Mr. President.
The mayor, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, sorry. Well, greetings. I'm Muriel Bowser. I'm the mayor of the best city in the world and also the sports capital. And we are delighted to be here with the Washington Commanders, the NFL, and the president to talk about this very exciting announcement for Washington, D.C. We believe in investing in sports because they have helped us transform neighborhoods, and the NFL bringing this event to the nation's capital will help us fill hotel rooms, our restaurants, and Americans from all 50 states will come to their nation's capital and enjoy our beautiful city and museum. So we're just delighted to be here, and we want to thank everybody for all the hard work to get here.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. President, thank you. We're honored to be here in the Oval Office, and to have you announce the 2027 NFL Draft is a special treat. So thank you for your support. Also, thank you for your support in the Commanders' new stadium. We agree it's going to be a great site. We think it's going to be great for our fans here, and it's great to come back home. And so we're very excited about that. Josh is leading the way on our behalf, and the mayor, and so we thank both of them for that. We also want to thank you because in the first term you helped us get a Canadian trade deal, which we want to make sure we note again and make
Canada
sure you know.
does not like me too much. They gave a great American company a lot of money that you deserved, frankly. So.
Thank you. The draft has really become one of the great entertainment and sports events. Just a week ago in Green Bay, we had over 600,000 people attend. The year before in Detroit, we had close to 800,000. As the president remarked, we believe we'll be well over 1 million when we come here to D.C. in 2027. So we not only believe it's a great site, we believe it's consistent with what the president said, which is investing in our communities, investing specifically here in the nation's capital, one that I grew up here in Washington, D.C., and is particularly important. We think we can have a tremendous impact on this community, and it will not just be an event, it will be something that will show the world how far the nation's capital has come and where it's going. So we're very excited about that.
And I also have a message tonight for the incredible people of Greenland. We strongly support your right to determine your own future. And if you choose, we welcome you into the United States of America. We need Greenland for national security and even international security, and we're working with everybody involved to try and get it. But we need it really for international world security, and I think we're going to get it. One way or the other, we're going to get it. We will keep you safe. We will make you rich, and together we will take Greenland to heights like you have never thought possible before. It's a very small population, but very, very large piece of land and very, very important for military security. Our country is going to hell. The critical job of institutions such as Heritage is to lay the groundwork, and Heritage does such an incredible job at that. This is a great group, and they're going to lay the groundwork and detail plans for exactly what our movement will do and what your movement will do when the American people give us a colossal mandate to save America. And that's coming. That's coming.
Breaking news. Vice President J.D. Vance and his family were forced to cut their vacation short after hundreds of pro-Ukraine protesters flooded their ski resort. What happened next shocked everyone. Vice President Vance and his family arrived at the Sugar Bush Resort in Vermont expecting a peaceful vacation. But what they found instead were hundreds of angry protesters calling him a disgrace and traitor to his country, accusing him of being ungrateful to Ukraine and calling them Nazi scum. The riots were so intense that they caused the Vance family to cut their trip short by having to flee to an undisclosed location. So why were the protesters so upset? Just days before this protest, Vance got into a heated argument with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky at the White House. Vance accused Zelensky of being ungrateful for the help the U.S. has given him. The argument became so heated that Zelensky had to be escorted out. Massive protests then erupted in Vermont, with demonstrators lining the streets and even camping out by the ski lifts, waiting for Vance to arrive. The protests were so intense that the governor of Vermont even had to step in and urge people to honor the Vance family's trip. However, tensions forced them to flee the scene. How do you feel about the protests and the Vance family's flight? Do you think J.D. Vance's stance on Ukraine was justified, or did the protests go too far? Please leave your thoughts in the comments section.
The president is very upset that the polls show that the country does not like him. The country really, really does not like him and sees his first 100 days as a disaster. He has had, in public opinion terms, he has had the most disastrous first 100 days of any president since the dawn of modern polling. No president has ever botched the first 100 days more badly than Donald Trump has botched it. And that's true not just for his approval rating generally and how people feel about him. It's for every single thing you ask the American public about in terms of what he has done. Do you like any of it? No.
Idon Alexander is now in a hospital behind me for some more checkups after 584 days of captivity.
Freedom from Gaza. The Red Cross rescuing from the clutches of Hamas 21-year-old Idon Alexander, the last living American hostage held by the terror group 19 long months. His parents are Israeli. He was raised in New Jersey. The dual national American-Israeli left the U.S. at 18 to join the IDF. He was abducted by Hamas on that fateful day of the October 7th terror attack. Family and friends were overjoyed.
I'm feeling very excited and happy. We're waiting to hug Idon.
His U.S. hometown of Tenafly was also happy. The IDF got Idon from the Red Cross and brought him to a military base outside Gaza, where his mother and father had come to greet him. They were thrilled. Also there, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, who played a big role in the U.S.-led talks. Witkoff's boss was also pleased.
His parents are so happy. They're so happy. And he's coming home to his parents, which is really great news.
Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu also claiming credit, while giving credit where it was due.
This was achieved thanks to our military pressure and the diplomatic pressure applied by President Trump.
In fact, it's reported Israel had little to do with these talks. Another sign, analysts say, of Trump sidestepping Netanyahu. Hamas called Alexander's release a gesture to the U.S. and hoped it would lead to a ceasefire and more aid. Israel returned to talks about a possible ceasefire and hostage release. Not soon enough for Hostage Square in Tel Aviv. 58 people remain Hamas captives. 20 are still alive. And yes, on his way back in a chopper to Tel Aviv after a long day, Idan sent that thank you note to the president.
By the way, we've just seen that Idan's grandmother got that hug in as well, and maybe there's one more hug coming. According to Idan's family, he could be visiting with President Trump at one of his stops on the Mideast tour later this week.
I want to thank Prime Minister Starmer and his very talented team for their outstanding work and partnership. Today's agreement with the UK is the first in a series of agreements on trade that my administration has been negotiating over the past 4 weeks. With this deal, the UK joins the United States in affirming that reciprocity and fairness is an essential and vital principle of international trade. But this is now turning out, I think, really to be a great deal for both countries, because it'll be really great for the UK also. So they're opening up the country. Their country is a little closed. The final details are being written up in the coming weeks. We'll have it all very conclusive, but the actual deal is a very conclusive one. We think just about everything's been approved. So good for both countries.
Thank you, Mr. President, Donald. And this is a really fantastic, historic day in which we can announce this deal between our two great countries. And I think it's a real tribute to the history that we have of working so closely together. This is going to boost trade between and across our countries. It's going to not only protect jobs but create jobs, opening market access. And as you say, Donald, the timing couldn't be more apt, because not only was it 80 years ago today that victory came for Europe after and at the end of the Second World War, but of course on that day the UK and the US stood together as the closest of allies. So to be able to announce this great deal on the same day, 80 years forward, almost at the same hour, and as we were 80 years ago, with the UK and the US standing side by side, I think is incredibly important and makes this truly historic.